I think I approached the idea of home from a distance, because it was, in a different sense, always being taken out from under my feet, basically. So I think a fundamental part of my practice is the question of what home means and what one's relationship can be to a place. Happy was a mother and grandmother and matriarch of my father's side of the family. She was called Happy for a reason. It wasn't her given name, but it's the name that everyone knew her as, and she was just a really warm and encouraging and beautiful presence, basically. My first memories of Grandma Happy were probably memories which were actually recorded in this footage which is in the film, which is showing here, which is footage which is shot at a family reunion at the house in 1993 by a cousin of mine. And, well, I would say that's a memory of mostly being overwhelmed by the size of the family and realizing that I had all these cousins who I hadn't met before, and aunts and uncles and all the rest of it. And then just seeing the orbit that took place with the family around Happy and Duke, her husband, my grandfather. In the house, I always loved coming up the stairs. There were outdoor stairs, and then you open the door and then you go kind of up the wooden steps to the top floor, which was the floor that my father and his brothers grew up in, Happy and Duke's house. And the kind of central living room was always so welcoming and exciting, because there was a table with small treats on it always, and there was actually another little coffee table to the side which just had framed photographs of all sorts of family members. And so I would just sit in front of that little table and like see a picture of myself, and then my cousins and my uncles and my dad when they were younger and things like this. I would say that this house, Happy's house, was one that I, came to and I'm kind of reaching for now, reaching back in time to get a sense of, as a marker in my own childhood, which I would say, like many people, was not always happy. I prefer not to speak about my specific experiences beyond the fact that, I can say that I was displaced at a very young age, briefly, and grew up in sort of fluid situations occasionally. And so the idea of home, which was more or less always there, was never completely a given. I would say the tribute just came because the house, which was this family home, which was essentially built for my father's side of the family to move into, was finally sold a couple of years ago because Grandma Happy passed away, and the house left the hands of the family. And so it felt like the right time to try and make something which paid tribute to the home, to the people who lived in it, to the building itself, but even more so to this neighborhood of East Orange, New Jersey, which has such a rich history and tradition of music and culture. The work developed in stages. Initially, the idea was that I wanted to ask my uncle, Victor Jones, who was a world-renowned jazz drummer and trumpetist, whether he would be interested in performing a tribute to the house. And in a sense, it was a challenge for me to ask him, and also for the audience for this film, to get a narrative from the actual rhythm and percussion which is being played. So the story is told by music, with music. I think I approached the idea of home from a distance, because it was, in a different sense, always being taken out from under my feet, basically. So that idea is something that I've had to grow towards for myself personally, but also I think a lot of, especially the early photographs and film works that I made, were sort of attempts to establish myself within certain communities, let's say. And so I think a fundamental part of my practice, even though it's not necessarily always the subject of a specific work, is the question of what home means and what one's relationship can be to a place. And so, of course, it was something that I took into very strong consideration, what this context is here, the space of the church, what it means for me, let's say, also what it means for Grandma Happy, who was a regular churchgoer towards the end of her life, but I think throughout her life that was part of her community. And it just felt like a really really rich way to connect to one kind of encapsulation of a family and home and host it in this in a space here in Copenhagen. Bridging that gap, let's say, between different communities. I think the arc of the story of Happy's house is complete. And I think I would be moving in the wrong direction if I wanted to myself consider moving into this home. I mean, I believe in transience, I think. I don't think it makes sense to try and hold on to things or think that everything will always be permanent. That said, I also believe very strongly in what a sense of home can provide. So somewhere in that in-between space is maybe where the film is existing.